So I've taken you from selecting your equipment right at the start, you're building your shopping list, deciding what you need and what influences those, through getting your airbrush, understanding your airbrush, learning how to strip it, learning how to clean it. We've talked about putting down basic paint, we've talked about masking and camouflaging, we've talked about thinning paint, we've talked about cleaning your airbrush, and we've also talked about doing more sophisticated things by learning how to practice your airbrushing skills. So now we're at the point where when you've been putting paint down on things, you need to seal it. And I'm not going to labour on this too much because actually it's fairly easy and straightforward and you've already learnt the skills for this. But what you want to do is you want to put varnishes down, and it's the same rule when you're airbrushing as it is when you're brush painting with a brush. If you're putting acrylic paints down and you want to put on enamel based washes afterwards, then you need to be putting an enamel or polyurethane varnish down. If you're going to want to use acrylics on top of your acrylics, then you want to be putting down a varnish that is solvent based. So there's lots of different varnishes on the market. Some of them are ready to go straight out of the jar, such as this one. You just need to give it a shake and make sure that it's fully mixed. But you can then shove that through the airbrush straight away. You can see that's mixed in no time at all. And you don't need to worry about thinning it. Others you can use straight into the airbrush. But you can also thin them. If you thin them, in this one you can thin with water. If you thin it, then what it does is, particularly when it's gloss, is it takes some of the shine down, so you might need a few more layers if you're trying to achieve a high gloss finish. And then there's others that should work right from the bottle, that are solvent based, and you're just going to want to do one coat and use it as a barrier between your previous paint coats and the others. Just check the bottle. Quite often the bottle will tell you what PSI to use and drying periods and things like that. And it might even tell you the needle. So this one tells you to use a 0.4 needle without dilution and apply 2 coats and let them dry 4 hours in between. This one, it will tell you to put multiple layers down and that you need 10 minutes before drying time before other layers. So there's different rules on there. Have a play around if you're not sure. You now know that one of the recommendations is that you have a little mule, something like this, a little kit you can build up and have a play on, try techniques, try pressures, see how they work before you go onto the model you've spent so much time on. Okay, so with all of that said, that really covers varnishes. It's about having a play, see what the instructions say, set your PSI somewhere between 15 and 20 if you're not sure, and just see what seems to work for you. So varnishing is easy. Make sure it's nice and dry. I like to leave it overnight if I can before you do any weathering, which is what we're going to focus on today. Now, when it comes to weathering, most weathering I think still is best done with a traditional brush. So things like mud splashes, a toothbrush, and you flick it or flick it over the end of a toothbrush or whatever. Then yeah, absolutely, brushes are a good way to go. However, there are some things that are actually better done with the airbrush, and the one that I find the best to be done with an airbrush is dust layers. Because when you do it with a brush, you're going to get a pooling and a concentration of the pigment, which you're not going to get with an airbrush, because an airbrush puts things down in a mist effectively. So when you want something very thin and dust-like, I think the airbrush is the way to go, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So you can get products that are designed for the airbrush, which are already thinned in theory, like this is Damp Earth Nature Effects from MIG, but you can thin it down even further with MIG acrylic, MIG thinners I should say. So you can get this, put it straight through your airbrush. I'm not going to get this top off on my ear around. Decant it straight into your airbrush and you're good to go. And like always, have a bit of a play and see what works for you. You can put it on with a brush, and it looks relatively effective. So if you want to coat wheels and things with it, you can do, or tires to get it in the groove and then you're wiping it off, that works fine. But if you want a delicate dusting, you might want to thin this even more and put in some layers. But you can mix your own. You can mix your own with oil paints, or you can even use acrylic paints, and that's what I'm going to show you today. So this is Light Earth. It's an ICM paint 1056, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how we're going to make a nice dust effect with this. So I'm going to put a little bit of water in first, because this is going to be as thin as you like. And my brush here, this is the one I use for mixing paints, that's already wet as well. It's just been in some water, and we're just going to take a little bit of the paint and dissolve it in. Now that is very, very translucent. It's not thick at all, and if you wanted to go thinner you could. And what we're going to do is we're going to build up layers. So I'm just going to decant a little bit into the paintbrush, into the airbrush. And then we'll just check that that is running nicely. Yeah. So what we can do with this very heavily watered mixed is we can just, at a distance, go over it like that and then just leave it to dry, and that's going to give us a very subtle effect when it dries. If I show you here, I mean it's so translucent you can hardly see it's gone on. You can actually see it. In fact, it's pooling a little bit for some reason, but let's get, there we go. You can see it there. When that dries, you'll have a nice subtle dusty effect. It's great for things like windscreens and things like that. We probably should have sealed this beforehand, which we've not done, but I'm just showing you the technique. Then when it dries, if it's too light, you just go over it again. This is going to sit in your airbrush for ages, so you're keeping your airbrush wet so it can sit there for half an hour or so, not a problem, while you wait for it to dry, and then you can build up another layer. But it's great for making things look a little bit grubby. So we've got this bright white writing here. So if I want to dull that down, we can just spray over it, and just adding a light colour, I mean it's a sort of a beige colour this, it just takes down the brightness a little bit and gives it an idea of aging. A bit difficult to see on the camera, but you can already see that looks less bright. And again, you just keep building the layers up over it as many times as you want until you get the effect that you're looking for. So I'll come back to you in a moment when this lot is dry. So you can see how we've now got a very slight change in the colour. It's very subtle, which is absolutely what we're looking for. You can't do that with a paintbrush, or at least you can't do it easily. And you certainly can't do it with control. But that's how you do it. You just build up the colours and you can create your dust effects. And you can do that in any colour, so you can have it as concrete dust or brick dust for fallen buildings. You can just play with it. What I'm going to do on the other side is I'm going to show you doing the same thing but with the enamel paint. So what I'm going to show you is two different effects, or well, it's one effect but two different dust colours. So this is actually a panel line wash, and we're going to use it to create a grey dust. So I'm using MIG enamel thinners just to thin that out. So you can see it's very, very small amount, and we can just decant that straight into the brush. We don't need a paint cup for that because it's such a tiny amount. And what I want to try and create is a dust effect that shows that a vehicle's been through one area and is now in a different area and is laying more dust but in a different colour. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an overall spray in that grey, which we've just done, and we'll let that dry, and you should be able to see a difference between this half and that half. So I've actually gone over it just so it stands out a bit more on the camera, and gone over it with a second thicker coat, not quite as diluted, so it's clear that we've done got some dust down. But you can see how that can make a difference just by overlaying a very thin layer. You can see how that can look sort of dusty and grimy, and you can mask that off, or once you've got the skill and you've done lots of practicing, you can do it freehand and just put a line in, and it will look fine. Right, now what I want to do is I want to go in with some damp earth over the top to show that we're in a different battlefield or different area. So I can use the same palette, doesn't really matter. And I've not cleaned the brush out, I've just flushed it out with a bit of white spirit, but I've not disassembled it or anything. So we're now going to take this damp earth, and you can see how that's quite a vivid contrasting colour. So that should give us a nice effect. But it's quite thick as it is, so we're going to put some enamel thinner in there. Now you can do all sorts with this, you can flick it on with a brush and all that sort of stuff, but with the airbrush we can do this nice mist coat. So let's do that. So what we want to do is maybe the bottom of the vehicle start getting muddy, it's going to a new field or whatever. So we want to just give that a feel of having travelled somewhere else. So we're just going to start and you can see how that gives you this nice mixed effect. It's been in two different areas, and you can thin it further if you wish. So you don't have to think about lots of thin layers. It's the way I usually do it is lots of thin layers and build it up. But what you can do is you can put down a darker layer and then further thin your paint. We'll just get the thicker paint through the chamber and get rid of it. And using your thinner paint you can go over the whole area and do a wider area, and it'll still build up and give you the same effect. So now that is dried, you can see how we've got a gradient of different colours working its way up through that, giving you a nice dusty looking model. Now I've been a little bit overt for the sakes of the camera. You can be as subtle as you like. The second layer ends just under the O there, and it's quite subtle, and I think the camera can just about pick it up. But you're now in the fun area of airbrushing, experimenting, having a play, trying different things, understanding what works so that you can apply those onto your models. I've taught you everything I know about airbrushing, so it's just a matter of having a play. Don't get too scientific with it. I've taught you everything that I can tell you, but Don't get all het up that you don't know the specific air pressure for different paints. Just have a play, see what works, have fun with it. That's the joy of airbrushing, and you will end up with a much better finish on your models. You will, with lots of practice and perseverance, you will absolutely enjoy airbrushing and wonder why you didn't try it sooner. So I hope this series has been helpful. If you have any specific questions, you're welcome to put them in the comments below, and I will try and my best to answer them. I can't say that I know everything about airbrushing, but what I do know, you've seen. So thanks for looking in. Like I say, I'm going to have some more topics being covered at an absolute beginner level in the future, so do hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoyed the airbrushing videos, then don't forget to hit the like. Thank you so much. You enjoy your modelling and your airbrushing, and I will see you very soon. Bye for now. Thanks for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so. It's free, and that way you won't miss my first impressions, my tool reviews, my product reviews, and any of my builds, including wooden model kits as well as plastic. It's all free, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can hit my PayPal link in the text below. Every pound goes straight into the channel to keep the cameras rolling and to do more fun stuff for you to watch.